Hey everyone, how's it going? I am Zeracon and I am back once again. Today is a different video from the ones that I've been making on my channel in more recent events, but it's something that I thought would be interesting in addition to being useful for people. So I was a late bloomer to the Dragon Ball franchise. I saw a couple of episodes as a kid and knew about the names of certain characters because my cousins talked about the show, but I didn't get into it until I was about 16, way after the original release on Toonami. After watching some of Dragon Ball Z Kai on 4Kids, my interest in it, along with anime as a whole, began to develop. But that's a story for another time. Flash forward a couple years, and I pick up my first copy of a Dragon Ball manga. While it wasn't my first manga, it was pivotal to how I saw manga and understood it along with the Japanese language. But let's dig into why you should read the Dragon Ball Z manga. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that Z is a continuation of the series Dragon Ball, which came before it. While it isn't completely necessary to have read or watched it, it is assumed that you already know about the preceding events. If you want to read Dragon Ball before getting into Z, that is completely fine, but you can jump into Z like I'm assuming a lot of people did, myself included. First, if you're completely new to the series because you either haven't thought about watching the anime, or maybe you are interested in the series but don't want or can sink so much time into over 200 episodes, this is perfect for you. The original Z anime had a lot of filler, and episodes were padded out tremendously. With the manga, you get the story in its purest form. No filler arcs, and no padding. The dialogue will be completely different too. The original dubs, whether they be the Ocean or Funimation one, were cheesy, and at times different from what the original lines were. With this, you have the original dialogue in translation. However, there's something that I want to address later on. Secondly, if you are a fan of the Dragon Ball Z anime, I still recommend reading the manga. Seeing the artwork is great and gives you a new appreciation for Toriyama's style, even if you can recognize it in other works. Besides that, though, seeing action take place on a page without any motion has a different weight than watching an animation. Now, manga, if you aren't familiar with it, is in black and white. However, there is something very interesting with this manga. There are 3 versions of the manga you can get, all of them published by Viz Media. There are the single volumes that are completely black and white. There are the Viz Big 3-in-1 volumes that are mainly black and white, but have a select chapter that is colorized. Lastly, there are the Dragon Ball Z colorized volumes, which are newer and are in full color. However, don't expect the coloring to be like the anime as far as quality is concerned. I don't currently own any of the colorized versions, but I have read some of them via my local library. To my knowledge, all of the volumes haven't been colorized yet, but I could be wrong. Also, the Viz Big and colorized versions are physically larger than the single volumes, which are the standard size of manga. There are a few more differences between these different versions, but again, I will touch that later. One thing to note, which fans of the anime have likely noticed, is that Toriyama's writing can be inconsistent at times. He will introduce new elements and ideas only to completely ignore them or even forget about them later on. I won't go into them for the sake of spoilers, but there is an ability that is completely new to the series around the early part of Z, and at the final saga, it is not addressed or even used even once, even though it should. It should literally be happening. Although there is another sort of noteworthy aspect of character development that did occur for one character at the end of one saga, but it goes completely away during the next saga. The way this character feels at the end is so great that it completely changed everything he had previously believed in. And it's completely gone in the next arc, which, again, I mean, in Toriyama's defense, he has expected to be done with the series before continuing. This happened with the Frieza and Cell sagas. I want to say it was also with the Saiyan saga, but I don't have substantial evidence to back it up. If you know if this is true or not, please let me know in the comments. And even in this age, years later, he has done work on Dragon Ball. That's how tethered he is to the series. I can understand if he doesn't want to do the work anymore, but I can understand why he does it. The franchise is a cash cow. And then also another thing as far as his writing goes, there were some also changes, like for the Cell Saga, the villain changed, like as far as like who the main villain was going to be, it changed twice, just because of editorial feedback, I believe. Another thing to note if you're a fan of the anime or haven't watched the series but are familiar with the names is that you will be seeing the Japanese version of quite a few characters' names. For example, Goku's surname, Son, is frequently used. Tien in the manga is called Tenshinhan. Krillin is Kuririn, although I think that not transliteration, but the translated name or localized name works just as well. And Frieza is spelled Freeza. And I almost thought I had figured out why the anime localization and all subsequent brandings spelled his name with an I, but my theory didn't really work when I thought about it. While the Romaji will use an I because of how the Ri works in Japanese. For the first vowel, the second one would also use an I. So, and here's the reason why. So like originally I thought that it was because it was going to be an I to an E because the E or E sound changes into an S sound, but that doesn't work at all because it's actually the other way around. It's the E or E letter that changes into an E sound or an I vowel as far as, the way it's written. So to be honest, I really, so I have no idea why, Funimation dub, spells it I-E instead of just E-E-Z-A. One cool thing to do with the manga is watch the slight changes in the art style as the story progresses. How Toriyama drew characters in the early parts will change to how he drew them in the later parts. I'm no art buff or student or anything like that, but I can't really detail these changes, but they are noticeable. I'm not saying if these changes are good or bad, that's just a personal taste. I'm just saying that there is a distinction. This can be seen in the anime as well since it replicates the manga, but I think that it's easier to just pull out the books and look at them side by side. Now, which version of the manga is right for you? Well, this is where I bring back the points I wanted to address from earlier. If you want a very close translation, I recommend the individual volumes. These retain the wording from the Japanese version, along with a lot of honorifics. If you're new to manga and anime, specifically subbed anime, this will be very confusing for you. I was never introduced to honorifics before this point, so it was very strange to me. Unfortunately, there is no explanation on how the honorific system works. I checked through the manga, so I didn't really see anything. So unless you're familiar with them, whether it be because you know about them through anime and manga, or you've studied Japanese, you will be confused. However, there are notes about characters and events that occurred in Dragon Ball, in addition to translations on specific attacks. While this is completely for aesthetics also, the individual volumes have an image on the spine that seems irrelevant at first. However, when combined with the preceding or following volume, it shows that it's part of a larger image. This is pretty cool for collectors. I only have 4 of the individual volumes though, so I don't know what the full image looks like. A brief disclaimer though, the volumes do contain, or at least these individual ones, do contain more mature language than what you'd expect from the original dubs. This can be quite jarring for people who grew up watching the original show. On the other hand, the Visbig and colorized versions do not contain the language that the individual volumes have, so you could give this to a younger kid, but there's still blood though. The reason for that is because Japan doesn't view profanity as the same way that Western cultures view it. Sometimes the direct translation isn't offensive at all, but how the meaning is coming off is offensive. So the usage of profanity in translation is the best way to describe the intensity of what is being said. In addition to a cleaner script, from what I can tell, a good amount of the honorifics have been removed. I only have copies of Vizbig volumes 4 and up, which occur near the end of the Frieza saga, while the standalone volume 5 takes place at the start of the Frieza saga, and the Vizbig copies that I have read from the library, which were years ago, I don't think that they had as many honorifics, or at least that's what I can remember. Other than that, though, the same thing applies with the colorized versions. Like, there's not really the only difference between the Vizbig and the colorized versions is the fact that the colorized versions are fully in color. And although they don't have 3 volumes inside with each individual colorized volume, I think there are only 2, but I could be wrong. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've read those as well. I will get the rest of the single volumes eventually. I'm really interested in seeing that full image and having that translation, but I'll also get the rest of the Vizbigs as well. I think I'll pass on the colorized versions though, since those don't really do much for me. And with that being said, that is it. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. This will probably be the last normal video I make for a while. My fall semester starts next week. However, as I said, there will be a Was It Good video every month. So until next time, everyone, I am Zeracon signing off. Have a good one.